The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on Jesus to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, and he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Jesus, getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, asked him to put out a little from the land. Jesus sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, O Lord, for I am a sinful man." For Simon and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. So also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." When they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
In my life, St. Peter and the gospel today have taught me so much about ministry, about what it means to follow the Lord. It was 1986, and I was living in Detroit, Michigan, on the border with Canada. And they just passed a law in the United States for the first time promising economic sanctions on employers who hired the undocumented. So people started to lose their jobs, or were afraid they would lose their jobs, those who were undocumented in the United States. And they heard that they could go to Canada, where they were more open to asylum claims and refugee claims. Many started coming to the border. Many who were fleeing the wars in Central America, in El Salvador at that time, Guatemala, Nicaragua in the 1980s. And at first, Canada would let them in and promise them a hearing. But because of the numbers, they were overwhelmed. And they had to start turning them back to the United States with an appointment to come back to the border in the future. Sometimes having to wait weeks or even up to 4 months. And I knew this was happening. I knew that these indigent people, poor, afraid of being deported back to their home countries, were arriving at the border, and they would be sent back to the United States, to Detroit, waiting for their appointments with no place to stay. Because I was the director of the Detroit Windsor Refugee Coalition, later to be known as Freedom House Detroit. And I said, what am I going to do? Soon there will be lots and lots of people, most of who don't even speak much English, and they have no place to stay. I called up the homeless shelters and asked if they could help me. They said they were already full, they couldn't help me. I called up some of the rich Catholic parishes who had resources. I thought maybe they could help me. They said they couldn't help me put up the refugees. If I submitted a written proposal, they would take it to the Social Concerns Committee, and later on they would perhaps give me money for the organization, and they did. What was I going to do? So the Reverend John Meyer, an Episcopalian priest, the pastor of St. Peter's Episcopalian Church, in the United States we say Episcopalian to mean Anglican, was on my board of directors of the organization. So I called him up. What do I do? And I wasn't even expecting him to help. But he said that his church would take all the refugees in and provide them with whatever they need. And I was amazed because St. Peter's Church was very poor. At their one Sunday Mass, they had only 12 people attending. And Father John Meyer and his wife Kathleen, they both had to have separate jobs to support themselves and their family because they couldn't live on the income from the church. Besides those 12 people who attended Sunday Mass, there was also a few homeless people who knew they would get coffee and donuts afterwards in the church basement. St. Peter's had never been finished as a church even. It was built in the 1920s, and when the Depression came, the stock market crash of 1929, they never finished putting in the stained glass windows. They never finished the ceiling. And yet this poor, struggling church by the name of St. Peter said, we will take in all the refugees. They can stay here as long as they need to. And they did. And before long, volunteers arrived with donations of food, mattresses, blankets. It was winter. Offers from doctors, lawyers, psychologists to help the people arriving with their problems. And we had soon many families and many individuals, over 50 people, at St. Peter's Church. Some of them up to 4 months long. And during that year, we were able to help hundreds of people. Hundreds of families go into Canada, start a new life, free from fear of deportation to their war-strewn countries. Sometimes we think that we have to have it all together in order to respond to God's call, that we have to have lots of resources, lots of education. And we say, oh, I have too many problems. I can't help. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough education. I don't have the right words. But it is exactly in our brokenness, in our incompleteness, in our poverty that we are able to help other people. That's what St. Peter in today's gospel in St. Peter's Church taught me. Depart from me, Lord, St. Peter said. Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. In his humility is what Jesus saw. Rather than saying, oh, yes, I can do everything. I trust in my own resources. I'm self-sufficient. I will be a wonderful disciple. No, he said, depart from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man. It is in our humility and in our poverty that we are able to help others. When I came to religious life as a Capuchin, eventually as a priest, I had a lot of problems, a lot of complexes. I was very afraid, very shy. You wouldn't know it now. They sent me to different psychologists, about, I think, 5 of them, some of who helped me, some of who were not able to help me very much. But they saw that I was able to grow, that I was willing to accept that I had problems. And now I know that it is in my problems, in my weakness, in my vulnerability, in my sinfulness that I am able to relate to other people and help them in their problems, in their poverty, in their nothingness, in their incompleteness, and their brokenness, because I am already broken myself. So Jesus says to all of us, follow me. Become a missionary, a lay missionary. Get involved in your church. Reach out to others. You don't have to have it all together. Jesus doesn't call the prepared and the ready. He prepares and gets ready those he has called, and he has called us all to greater service, to greater mission in our families, in our church, in the world. There's young people listening who are considering a vocation to religious life or to priesthood, to become a Capuchin brother, or a religious sister, nun. It is exactly in our incompleteness, in our poverty, in our brokenness, where God calls us. Do not think that you do not have enough intelligence or enough smarts or enough training or enough confidence. It is when we are weak and poor and broken that we are able to help others. And so we hear the word of God calling us today to become fishers of men, to catch people, to raise them up into the boat of salvation, the church, that fetch them out of the poverty of those deep waters, which at the first century, those deep waters were a sign of chaos and confusion. That's where Leviathan, the monster, lived. To reach out and catch people and bring them into the boat of salvation. The Word of God calls us today. And as we receive communion today, the broken bread reminds us of our own brokenness and how Christ was broken on the cross. Jesus comes to us in our brokenness and gives us life. And when we accept that, then the glory of God shines forth. And we're able to minister, to help, to make a big impact in people's lives.